Great. Welcome, everyone. We're just going to take a couple seconds while people join in. Thank you for being here today. We really appreciate it. All right, great. Great. In the interest of time, we're going to begin. My name is Malvika Rendive. I'm the programs manager here at SID United States, and today's event is this Promise of Smart City Innovations, which is hosted by the Infrastructure and Urban Development Work Group. You'll hear from our co-chairs and wonderful speakers lined up for this session as well. But before I turn it over to our speakers, a little bit about SID United States if you're not familiar with us. We are the largest and the most active chapter of the Society for International Development, which is an international network founded in 1957 to serve as a global forum dedicated to sustainable economic, social, and political development. We serve as a global town square for the international development community, bringing together people from diverse organizations, disciplines, and career stages in a neutral, independent forum to share information and discuss important issues and challenges that are facing our community, as we are doing today. A few different ways that you can get involved with us. You can stay up to date with our different events and activities by signing up for a newsletter. You can apply to be a volunteer co-chair, such as David and Carlene here today, or you can work with us as a work group or network associate, such as Nishant, who has joined us today. You can attend our hybrid annual conference on April 26th. Registration for this conference should be open very soon, so keep an eye out on our social media and our newsletter for any information about the conference. And you can also follow us on social media. As I mentioned, we are SID United States on all platforms, and you will find us on the different platforms listed below. A few things to note for today's event. This is a recorded session, and the recording will be shared publicly into our different social media networks. There's closed captioning available if you would like to access it through your own individual settings. If you have any questions for our speakers today, please post them in the chat box. We do understand that this is a short session, and so we will try our best to get you answers from the speakers. But if we're not able to do so, I do apologize in advance. And with that, I will turn it over to our moderator and one of the co-chairs for the Infrastructure and Urban Development Work Group, David Honer.
Thank you, Malvika. I want to welcome everyone who's participating in the SID event today. We're glad for you to be with us today. This event today, as the title suggests, is devoted to exploring the promise of smart city innovations. I especially want to thank our speakers for taking the time to share their experience in advancing smart city innovations in various parts of the world. And I'm delighted that with the panel we've been able to convene today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them shortly. Before delving into the specific opportunities and challenges of smart city development, I'd like to establish a common understanding of what constitutes a smart city by sharing a few definitions. First, a smart city integrates information and communication technology and various Internet of Things devices to optimize the efficiency of city operations and services. This includes areas such as transportation, energy, waste management, healthcare, and more. The ultimate goal is to enhance the quality of life for residents while ensuring sustainable development. The European Commission gives the following definition. A smart city is a place where traditional networks and services are made more efficient with the use of digital solutions for the benefit of its inhabitants and its businesses. In the World Bank 2016 World Development Report, they identified a smart city as a city that leverages the latest technology and connectivity to make better decisions and achieve the urban aspirations of its citizens. Smart cities are characterized by a couple of things. They make more efficient use of physical infrastructure, roads, built environment, and other physical assets through data collection, data analytics, and AI. And they expand paths for governments and citizens to interact through opening data and services available to citizens via digital means and through increasing channels through which citizens can communicate to their governments in planning, budgeting, service monitoring, and other areas. In our panel today, we are intentionally employing a broad definition of smart city to include any area where digital solutions are employed to increase the efficiency, accessibility, and/or transparency of city operations for the benefit of the citizens it serves. This could range from environmental monitoring tools to smart traffic management, to mechanisms for citizen budget input, and to platforms for citizens to register a business, secure an ID, or pay their taxes. Just as smart city innovations offer great promise, there are some challenges to the effective use of smart city approaches, as we'll find, I think, in the discussion today. These include the costs of investments potentially outweighing their benefits, sort of the hype versus reality divide, the challenges of sustaining digital solutions in terms of the cost of maintaining expensive ICT systems and the human technical capacity that's needed to do so. Third, the potential for smart city improvements to exacerbate the digital divide, leaving marginalized communities even further behind. And finally, the vulnerabilities created related to data privacy and cybersecurity, and even the potential for governments to use citizen data for nefarious ends. As SID's focus is on supporting development in lower and middle income countries, the purpose of this conversation is to draw lessons from a wide range of cities to identify opportunities for cities of various sizes, economic level of development, and technological capacity. Just as in the US, what works in New York City may not work in Buffalo or Ithaca, the effective advancing of smart city innovations anywhere requires adapting them to the needs and capacity of a given city. By assembling today a group of practitioners, we hope to root this conversation in the political, social, economic, fiscal, and technological realities that face the mayors, city managers, council members, technocrats, and citizens of a given city. One theme that I think will come through today is that the importance for any technology to be oriented to the use and benefit of citizens, which requires that citizens be put in the center of the entire process, from design to operationalization to governance. For our panel today, each panelist will share from their experiences for about 10 minutes. I'm trying to keep it to 10 minutes. We have tried to build in time at the end for there to be Q&A. Our speakers' full bios are on the SID website, and they're quite impressive, so I encourage you to read them. But since they're there, I'm going to keep my intros fairly brief in order to allow them more time to share. Our first speaker today is Kevin Nelson. Kevin is the urban governance lead for the governance team within the Bureau of Development, Democracy, and Innovation at USAID. In this role, he chairs the Urban Expert Working Group, and he is currently coordinating USAID's strategic thinking about the role cities and urban areas have in driving national economies, promoting democracy and governance, and addressing climate change, anti-corruption, violence prevention, and supporting local solutions to municipal service delivery. He is not today speaking in an official capacity for USAID. He'll be sharing with us about digital governance solutions that USAID has supported in its portfolio. Kevin, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, David. As was mentioned, I'm in the governance office of USAID's Democracy, Human Rights, and Governance Bureau. So while we have a wide reach, today I'm going to focus specifically on my office's kind of wheelhouse, so to speak. So focusing on governance, even though there is a wealth of investment that USAID has in the digital democracy space. And currently going on now is the third Summit for Democracy in Korea, where advancing digital democracy is being advanced with some of our partners through that event. So I can speak to that in the Q&A, but in terms of these 10 minutes, I'm going to focus on on the expertise that I have and the office that I am located in. So I'm an urban planner and have worked for decades on understanding the challenges and prospects that cities face in their management and delivery of critical services. My office focuses not only on local and urban governance, but also economic governance, legislatures, public sector reform, and public administration. For many years, we have worked with national and subnational governments to improve those operations, waste management, water infrastructure, sanitary services, and improving those systems for fee collection and tax revenue. Under today's theme of smart cities, I've been asked to think specifically, like I said, about governance solutions. So I'll speak to that over the course of a couple examples. So specifically, just want to, as a ground rule, want to mention why I'm an urban planner and worked with cities over the course of my career. I'm not a specific expert in digital governance, but my work in cities and urban spaces has interlinked a lot on digital solutions. So I'll put forth some of those today. So in many countries that USAID partners and invests in, we use digital technologies and e-government solutions to embed more efficient operations and processes by which increase services while improving accountability, transparency, and leads to public trust. So those three things, the accountability, transparency, and public trust are cornerstones the work that we do within the Democracy, Human Rights, and Governance Bureau, and we seek to find that, that foundation in all the work that we do. So that's no different in city operations and services, thinking about city life, including road repairs, education, water, so on and so forth. So e-governance tools that we've developed allow government to digitally interact with those residents, businesses, and other governments and departments. So with that, some of the examples that I'll talk about specifically relate to those systems in terms of reducing costs for purchasing of goods and services and help cities anticipate future needs. So with that, we know kind of broadly, and I'll just speak for a second about the USG as a whole, because we do focus on smart cities as a overarching umbrella. And the State Department states that the U.S. Supports modernization of governance and procurement tools where it is feasible, impactful, and economically sustainable, and that modernization solutions adhere to the 12 principles from the OECD recommendations on public procurement, including transparency, integrity, access, and accountability. So just want to make that connection that the work that we're doing at USAID speaks to not only the USG, the US government in terms of our coordination, but also speaks to our coordination with the OECD. So with that, I just want to, then considering some of those challenges that cities face in adopting digital solutions, leaders should ensure that equitable and inclusive access to services as a transition to e-governance solutions by engaging with a diverse set of community stakeholders during the planning, design, and implementation process, where those community members that are least likely to be able to access those digital solutions, we want to ensure that that access is brought to bear, throughout the engagement. So, thinking through some of this, I just want to highlight a couple of other ground rules that we think about in terms of that engagement, and then I'll shift over into speaking to a couple specific examples. Many smart city solutions can collect, store, and access large volumes of sensitive data, including personally identifiable information, biometric data, and information about individual activities, which make accountable digital governance especially important. So while we're focused on, increasing the efficiencies of service delivery, we also want to make sure that there is that human right component in terms of the sensitive nature of data collection. So city leaders, community organizations, businesses, residents, and other stakeholders should engage in that dialogue to promote that transparency and inclusivity when developing and adopting either smart city laws, regulations, policies, and other governance structures. So with that, I want to talk about a couple programs and just give a highlight in terms of how we've adapted and applied and implemented those digital solutions. So first, briefly, is a program called DIA. DIA is a groundbreaking and award-winning mobile application that connects 19 million Ukrainians with more than 120 government services, dozens of digital documents, and has distinguished Ukraine as a world leader in e-government innovation. The app, which was supported by USAID, UK-Aid, and the Eurasia Foundation, is also now being launched in Ecuador and Armenia. So while this app is relatively new, it kind of speaks to this confluence of thinking both at the donor level, whether it's USAID or even UK-Aid, but thinking about how even in a conflict experience that Ukrainians are under now, there are ways to make the connectivity or those touch points between residents and municipal services to make that more streamlined through technology. So because that's relatively new in terms of its outreach, I'll just mention that, but now speak to a couple other examples. The second is the e-governance activity in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the operating environment there for government-led processes, including interactions between public officials and potential investors, local businesses, and citizens, was inefficient and insufficiently not transparent. Government employees lacked the digital tools to improve the efficiency and provide public access to information on procurement, which in turn would reduce the discretionary power of public officials, a major source of corruption. So as we can see, looking at making these processes more efficient address a variety of issues. So in April 2020, USAID launched the e-governance activity to assist in harmonizing its e-governance legislation and regulatory framework with EU directives and international best practices in developing new software to improve the efficiency, accountability, and transparency of the government. So in particular, USAID worked with local officials to develop a new information management system for all inspection services in those entities. And we created a state-of-the-art enterprise system for e-construction permitting in selected municipalities. The IMS platform is flexible and will be used in the foundation platform for a wide variety of e-governance services, including health, land, and business. And to further bolster accountability and transparency, the project worked to build the capacity of civil society organizations to monitor and report on the public procurement process, including this focus on corruption. So just to kind of, not only is it improving the services, but really bringing in those stakeholders. And just briefly, just two more quick examples. A third example for e-procurement is in Kosovo. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Kosovo government sought a process to effectively provide goods and services to citizens and found a way through an electronic procurement platform to address that. So developed with the support of USAID, Transparent, Effective, and Accountable Municipalities activity was launched. In this, an e-procurement allows all public institutions to conduct procurement activities online, from drafting the tender dossiers and publishing calls for applications to bid applications, bid evaluations, protests, and signing of the contracts. So moving all that work online and digitally created efficiencies and really got to the point where, according to the Public Procurement Regulatory Commission, in the period between March and September 2020, so during sort of the height of the pandemic, contracting authorities conducted around 4,000 procurement activities using this e-procurement system. So one of the results of that transparent, effective accountability municipalities activity was that it supported the creation of open procurement, the creation of an open procurement transparency portal, which was a civil society led. So again, residents at the ground level were pushing through or enforcing the automatically a process that pulls data from the government's e-procurement platform and presents it in a user-friendly state so that the public can have eyes on not only the processes that was created, but how those how those contracts were being managed, so they can see at every step of the process the way that government was operating. And then, and just to finish, a fourth example is from India. And it should be noted that e-governance and smart city tools are, certainly not new. And we know, kind of looking back about 20 years, that USAID worked with India 20 years ago to develop the Indo-USAID Financial Institutions Reform and Expansion Project. So many e-governance modules across various sectors, being in education, health, and WASH, have been put in place and have seen results due to investments in public administration. So there are reasons to believe that progress does happen, and we can see it over the course of time. But so within that, a couple of years ago, India had launched a 100 Smart Cities initiative. So 100 cities were designated to implement smart cities ideas. So with that, the USAID's Asia Bureau launched a 5-year Building Healthy Cities program starting in 2017. This ended in 2020, but the program results are now being documented. So just specifically from that, the city of Indore, one of the 100 smart cities, focused its digital transformation on improving wastewater management by waste management by implementing a monitoring system that tracked both waste trucks and drivers separately. So you could see where the trash was collected and which drivers were actually working through and actually being part of or being connected to their routes. And so that any delays and inefficiencies in the system could be identified and tracked through geospatial mapping. Remediation was able to take place in real time, tracking both the driver and the truck, and collection across the city improved drastically. Well, these are just some examples of digital governance and e-government. I would be more than happy, like I said, in the Q&A to talk more about some of these examples, but then also to expand upon, as I mentioned, some of the other work that USAID is doing in more of the democracy space related to e-governance solutions as well as smart cities technology. So with that, I'll pass things back to David to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. That's great. And I think that's a great kickoff to this discussion. And it's a reminder that this is an area where potentially our partner countries can leapfrog the US and other developed countries. I was at the rollout for the D application last year in Washington and was impressed that they could do passports, other ID documents, driver's license. I still have to carry a physical driver's license. I still have my 1980s issued Social Security card quickly fading. So a good reminder. I don't think it's going to be the last time we hear that. I'm real excited about our next speaker because of a travel schedule we were able to secure at the last minute. But Mike Alamarung is the city administrator of Quezon City in the Philippines. Our company's done work in the Philippines for decades, and anywhere you travel in the Philippines, when you want to know what a model governance approaches in cities and municipalities, Quezon City is a city that is almost universally pointed to. It's a city known for its innovation. Mike serves as the principal advisor to the city mayor, developing city plans and strategies and overseeing city operations. He's the architect of the city's e-governance initiatives and spearheaded the expansion of social services, including the city's unified Q Citizen ID. He's a strategy and management consulting expert with extensive experience working in both the public and private sectors, including with the Office of the President, the Social Security System, CNN Philippines, Citibank, Procter & Gamble, and others. Mike will be sharing the experience of Quezon City in designing and implementing smart city solutions, highlighting both their accomplishments and some of the challenges they've encountered along the way. Over to you, Mike.
All right, thanks, David. So good morning, everybody, and really happy to be here. Glad it could all work out. So as David mentioned, really, I'm here to talk about Quezon City's experience implementing smart city. And so I'll provide a brief background of that what we did, some of the results were, and some of the challenges we encountered. But also want to caveat by saying this is at least in our perspective, one developing country's city's experience in a developing smart city. And I say that because I happen to be in the smart city conference right now in Taiwan and realized, just as I realized the last time I was in one in Barcelona, that many of the things that are considered smart city in developed country actually don't work so well in developing country. And I wanted to at least talk a little bit about that. So can go to the next slide, please. All right, so just quick background. Quezon City is a city, the largest city in the Philippines. It's over 3 million residents and 6 districts and land area of 161 square kilometers. So we are the largest in the country. Next slide. So I guess the first thing I want to highlight is why even pursue the smart city? At least from Quezon City's perspective, we did it for the following reasons. One, we wanted to make services more efficient and effective. We also wanted to make sure that we were making data-driven decisions and properly allocate our limited resources. And I think in developing countries, that is actually a very important aspect. But most importantly, we do smart city because we want to enhance the quality of life for the citizens. And so it's not smart city for smart city's sake. And a lot of people might want to go into smart city saying, let's do smart city, but I think you have to start with why. Next slide, please. So what did we actually do? And this one I want to just break down. And in Quezon City's perspective, really, the central part of smart cities, our smart city implementation is the smart identity management. And that's the Q citizens, and that's really smart identity for the citizen, for the business, or for the property, and all of those are the starting points of the rest of how everything works. On the left-hand side, you have smart systems, both publicly available smart systems and internally available smart systems. But at the same time, and this is what you find a lot in developed countries, really, it's a lot of smart infrastructure. And that's on the upper right-hand side. And you can see that when you have smart streetlights, CCTVs, smart sensors, fiber optic networks, and all things like that. But what we did also find out is that we actually needed to do a lot of smart policies. And so we passed a lot of executive orders or ordinances that actually supported a lot of these to make it happen. And one of the biggest challenges in developing countries is just developing the smart people. And whether that be either external or internal. And there's a lot of capacity building that goes into it, both internally for those implementing, but also externally for those receiving the new initiatives. Next slide, please. So just a quick recap. In 2019, when the administration changed, there was actually nothing. So that everything you see here started out after July 2019. And where are we now? Next slide, please. So we are actually, we started out with the smart identities, and this is the Q Citizen ID. It comes with the app. And I think a lot of this we didn't invent. This is actually, we decided to go follow Estonia, which is well known as one of the best examples of digitalization. And so we basically copied that approach. So Q Citizen ID is the main, the central stat. Next slide, please. All right. For today, we are over 1 million in terms of Q Citizen IDs issued, and this is a population of 3 million, so that's 1/3. And everybody below 15 is not really the target market. So if you eliminate all of the babies and the kids, it's a large number. Next slide. And so let's start with the smart systems. Next slide. So one of the key things that we laid out in Quezon City was to make sure we knew what we were doing. And so our smart systems Quezon City are all available online. So it's cloud-based. The entire system is cloud-based. It's a single sign-on, and a lot of the implementations that you find in Smart City it's a lot of different implementations, and they don't talk to each other. So in Quezon City's sake, everything's talking to each other. It's a single cloud-based platform, single sign-on. So we don't want multiple accounts for different things. It's API based and along with cybersecurity and the rest. Next slide. Now, next slide, please. All right. So what's happened? Before we had a lot of these things, pen and paper applications, and those are now online. In person, with a lot of people in City Hall, we had tons and tons of people. Now it's all virtual. Not that you can't come to City Hall, you can, but it's still in the same online system. We used to have long lines and very sequential. Now there are no lines and it's simultaneous. We used to have very synchronous applications for each of our services. Now they're asynchronous. It used to be quite slow with lots of red tape. Now we would love to think it's more efficient and transparent. There used to be a lot of fixers and corruption. I'm not going to pretend that they're gone. They've been definitely reduced. So a lot of more ownership and accountability. And the systems used to be siloed. Today, they're all integrated. Next slide. So let's see a subset of all the services. So from nothing in 2019, we now have about 25 different systems running and 145 public services available online. We just grouped them into four. So you can see a lot of the focus in the developing country, at least in our example, is our social services related. How do you apply for a scholarship, apply for financial assistance, regulatory related, business permit applications online, building permit, civil registry, zoning, revenue generation, so business tax payments, business tax assessment, and empowerment also. So things like a startup QC program or a people's corner where you can report anything that you find with a inefficient service or somebody violating something, you can actually do that online. Next slide. And of course, there's some internal systems. And the big thing here is probably the GIS, graphical information system that we're using. Unified CCTV command center and the like. Go on, next slide. We did a lot of smart infrastructure. Next slide, please. And you'll see this is really going to look far from developed country perspective. But for example, we started doing from no fiber optic. We're now ongoing with a over 200-kilometer fiber backbone. And this is really intended to enable everything else. So we had to go as far as that because a lot of the conversations we had is how do you do you do AI on your CCTVs? Well, we only had 50 working at the time, so I couldn't even talk about AI. Now we're at over 1,300, and we're targeting 10,000. So where other developed countries are already we're using artificial intelligence on it. I'm still putting them in. And so that's an example of what's happening. Next slide. And of course, there's smart policies. Next slide, please. And some of the smart policies include, these are just a subset of that. So QCID is now an ordinance passed, and everybody's encouraged to get one. Scholarship ordinance allows us to do it online. And we created an ease of doing business, that's CART EODB at the bottom, unit to handle improving business services. So these are some examples of what we had to do. Next slide. And of course, there's a smart people, capacity building and empowerment. And again, just a reminder when we did it, and I'll look at a little bit of the challenges. Next slide. So, and this is some of the things we learned. Some of the big challenges are as follows. A lot of people talked about smart city. And what we find is that um, there's a lot of you try to build smart city for actual processes, but what we found in our implementation is that there are so many exceptions in everything that we did. So when you try to do business permit online, we used to get World Bank and a few other partners tried to tell us to do it one way, and we're like, yes, we can build it that way, but there are so many exceptions that we need to build in the system because you're implementing a building permit and business permit online where a lot of people are in the wrong zone. They're operating beyond what they were supposed to do, or they built the building too tall. There's no building permit, doesn't exist. So you have to build for the exception. It's important that we're able to budget, but unfortunately for developing country like in our case, on a per capita basis, it's actually quite low. In our case, it's for those who know, it's about 10,000 pesos per person. That would be roughly about $200 a person. It's probably more what we could spend. That's the entire budget on a per person basis. Finding the right partners is important. And we've done a lot of that. We had to do a lot of process re-engineering. When you put the service online, a lot of the approaches in smart city is, in particularly when you first try to do it, is you try to put things you were doing in pen and paper online and realized because it's online and all systems are talking, you no longer need to do a lot of the things you were doing before. So the best example I could give is that we used to have scholarship applications, and every year you would have renewal for those in the 4-year program. And we used to ask for a lot of documents until they realized, and we basically discussed, hey, it's a renewal. That means you already know who they are. All you really need in renewal are the grades and that the fact that they're enrolled the next year, and everything else should be automatic. So we had to change a lot of what we were asking them to do, but we're able to do that now because it's an online system. Uh, People and technical capabilities is where it's usually a challenge. The government, particularly in developing countries, the salaries are not very high. And so trying to go digital or smart city is really quite difficult because you can't actually afford the experts. So we did a lot of outsourcing to try to get them in because you could not pay them on the salary scale that we had. And there's always this challenge between service and revenue especially when you are going this way and you're partnering with private sector. We're in the private sector, of course, is trying to profit, and the government is trying to provide service. So we've had a lot of pushback and back and forth in terms of how we're trying to do stuff. The best example I can give is that a lot of the implementations before, when you did online payment, you basically had a convenience fee. And that's because the private sector would say, we'll implement online payment for you, yeah, at no cost to government, and they'll put the convenience fee. So that's from the private sector perspective. From the government's perspective, well, I'm providing a service for the citizen, I got to do it as cheap as possible. So in Quezon City's case, we actually have the lowest fees because in our case, fortunate, we're able to leverage economies of scale such that the fees are much cheaper than if you tried to go to City Hall. So it had to be to the point we're in, if we're going to put any fee, to help recover the expense, it's got to be a no-brainer fee because service is still first, such that nobody would ever complain about it. So in our case, it's about 10 pesos if you use a Gcash, and that's quite low. That's very low actually. And there's always scope creep. So as you build the system, we constantly realized there was so much more to build, and so the scope kept creeping no matter in all the systems that we've built, because we kept building for exceptions and things like that. And when we started building the systems, we realized there were so many other things that needed to happen. So we always had scope creep in everything that we had to do. Next slide. But these are the two most important challenges on the next slide, is that we realized, especially after implementations in the Philippines, leadership matters. In developing countries, there is tons of corruption and tons of governance issues. And if the leadership is not on board with your smart city, it won't work, because the smart city, I think was mentioned earlier, includes transparency and accountability. And the leadership has to be willing to be more transparent and accountable. And so leadership matters. And no matter what system we built, it was still people dependent. And so integrity was important. In our case, for example, when we did build business permits, it's 100% online. Uh, Somebody could still sit on an application if they want. The difference between pre-smart city and post-smart city is that we knew how long it's been in the system. When the application happened, and who's holding it up, whose account is holding it up, we knew. So there's a little bit of that going on. But if somebody wanted to sit on it, they could still sit on it. So these are the two most important things that we found. And I think that's pretty much the last of the important slides here. Next slide. So what's next? Last two slides. So we're basically going to try to digitize everything, and the goal was that the real goal in Quezon City's case is anything that we can put online, we will put online. So these are some of the things coming in, and I think that's pretty much it. Last slide. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions later on.
Thank you, Mike. That was a great case study and an impressive amount that Quezon City's done in the last several years. Appreciate it and look forward to questions to come. Our next speaker will be Dr. Zvi Weinstein. Zvi is a co-founder of the Smart Cities Institute. He early served as the national coordinator for project renewal of disadvantaged neighborhoods at Israel's Ministry of Construction and Housing for quite a few years. As a multidisciplinary academic, he's widely published on a range of urban development issues and has been a speaker at the Barcelona Smart Cities World Conference for the past 12 years and has an impressive number of advanced degrees. Dr. Weinstein will be speaking on how to humanize technology in smart city development through sharing his experience with the digital concept of citizen participation that was launched in Tel Aviv around 10 years ago. Dr. Weinstein.
You are still muted.
Can people hear me?
Okay. Hello, everybody. I would like to start my presentation with several citations to emphasize the connection between city or small city, as everybody call it, and human technology. The first one is going like this. Technology is just enabler, tool, and not a goal. And as such, it is only as useful as long as a person use it. The second, by a very famous person, Jean Jacobs. She said, cities have the capacity of providing something for everybody, only because and only when they are created by everybody. Another one, if democracy is about the will of the people, then it's our job to find out what that will be. And the last one by another famous person, Steve Jobs, said, it isn't the faith in machine, it's the faith in people. All these citations look very simple, but in reality, not every local government or city around the world can implement and make it as a formal standard and commitment as a commitment policy to the operation of the city itself. The second thing that I want to mention and emphasize is the mayor of Tel Aviv. He is now on his sixth election. And on the first time when he came to be the mayor, he called me and asked me to write 2 paragraphs for what he called the scroll of Tel Aviv independence. And he asked me to put 2 paragraphs about citizen participation. I did it, and it was printed, of course. And this idea of citizen participation goes with him for the last 26 years. And it is also, we see it a lot during the innovation of what we call digital, which is the main application of Tel Aviv, using by nearly 250,000 of inhabitants in Tel Aviv out of 400,000. And it became the very useful component to connect between the city, all departments, and citizens themselves. The, the motto of the concept of digital cell priority says that knowledge is power, but we are going to bring the power to citizen participation. Okay, this is a transformation from knowledge is power to participation in power. City Hall have underwent a very close digital revolution for nearly 6 months to allow and assist all the employees in different departments in the city to, sorry, to understand what participation means. Citizens today are connected to all the departments and database of Tel Aviv and can use everything through the card and applicants they call digital. There are nearly 75 different possibility to use this digital for each one. But the main emphasis is all the information between the city and the resident is according to the address, the dwelling, where the person is staying. So he knows everything what is going around his neighborhood, whether he needs to register his child to the kindergarten or school, or if tomorrow one of the streets are going to be closed, and all the events and community aspect in his own neighborhood. The digital platform succeeded to bring almost everything to the resident themselves. One of the main point is the what we call the transparency. Every citizen knows everything what is going in his neighborhood and around in the whole city. Sorry. There is a special unit of startup in the City Hall itself, which help on one end to the different needs of the departments, and on the other end, assist citizens if they have any issues or problems to solve. They are also responsible for doing and implementing Tel Aviv strategic plan, which runs for many, many years already. Digital is about 12 years old, and in the year 2014, Tel Aviv won the award at Barcelona Smart Cities Congress, at a year when the topic was cities for citizens and citizens for cities. And it was something great that gave a very big push to the what we call digital, and many cities around the world arrived to Tel Aviv to study and learn what does it mean and how to implement it in their own cities. Of course, each city is different in its politics, culture, number of population, size, and so on. What else I can say? Yes, digital is going along with all the citizens, and it even built a special compound in the city. It's called Atidim, and if I translate it, it's the future. This is a compound of nearly 1,500 startups and high-tech companies that working around the clock to find better solution how to manage the city or to bring the best innovations both to the city itself and to the world. I guess that most of you know that Israel, or people from Israel, invented many technological items. For instance, I'll bring only one, this on key. This is an Israeli innovation, just for your knowledge. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The main effort of digital is to empower citizens, and now Tel Aviv is running a very big ecosystem project of sustainability among many, many neighborhoods. In this kind of project, there is a very close connection between local residents and different departments in the city, like the engineering, environmental, the digital, and more. Of course, community and education. The city invites people to participate in master plans and plans, physical plans for their own neighborhoods. We also have what we call the participatory budget. It is a sum of about $100,000 for 2 years of doing what the people would like to improve and bring more quality of life to their own neighborhoods. I'll stop here because my thought is finished. Sorry. I'll be ready to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Weinstein. We need to move on. We're a little bit behind, not terribly, but we are a bit behind. So I would like to leave some time for questions. So Jaco and Matt, I think you can still keep to your 10 minutes, but if you can try to keep it to that, that'd be great. So our next panelist is Jaco Cronje. Jaco is a digital solutions architect and national lead for WSP's system integration practice. He has pioneered numerous technologies across Africa in smart cities space, as well as residential, retail, and commercial environments. Jaco works in the development of system architectures and the deployment of enterprise-level digital platforms, data collection, analysis techniques, facility, cybersecurity, and control strategies, and the built environment to find business intelligence and operational efficiencies for clients. He'll be sharing his insights gained from implementing smart city solutions in cities as varied as Cape Town, South Africa, Kigali, Rwanda, Mahe in the Seychelles, and Denver, Colorado. Over to you, Jaco.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you to all those participating. We've had some great comments from Mike, Kevin, and Z. So a lot of what I'll be speaking through over the next couple of minutes really emphasizes what these leaders have said ahead of me. I'm speaking on behalf of my own experience in the field of smart cities. I'm based in Houston, Texas, so I appreciate being able to participate in the session and really leveraging on what I've done originally in South Africa for the city of Cape Town, as well as the cities of Durban and Johannesburg, and then had the opportunity to work across the African continent, and now also working in the US and for US cities. So between all of those projects, I want to draw some threads of commonality. My background is engineering, so I'm speaking from the point of view of and the perspective of designing solutions and systems that can be adopted within a city environment for its citizens. So Z made a note about the city has to serve its people and has to be designed by its people for its people. So really, I can't echo that enough. I was fortunate to work for the city of Cape Town as well as a public servant. So really, just understanding that service delivery that we need to deliver to our citizens, not just to our clients. Mike also made a comment around the city shouldn't just be smart for the sake of being smart. So we'll speak about what we're trying to achieve with a smart city. With that said, if we can go to the next slide, when we look at smart cities, we really have to look at the outcomes. Often we find cities, clients, also sometimes designers trying to throw technology at a building, at a district, at a city, just because they've seen it in a brochure, they've seen it at a conference. We need to take a bottoms-up approach where we look at what can we do for the citizens, what are the challenges that the city is facing. Each city has a unique set of challenges and has a unique path towards smart. Smart is not a destination for me. Smart is a journey. So incremental change over a period of time allows the city to become smarter. And as it becomes smarter, the employees of the city are able to better manage the systems that's being implemented, because you also run a risk of jumping ahead with technology implementations when the local community cannot support it from a support perspective, from an operations perspective. It also ensures that there's a transition and change management that's required even for citizens, as it was spoken about Quezon City, that I'm sure when the new ID system was rolled out, citizens didn't just simply change the next day. There was some apprehension about using it, some questions about using it, how to use it. So over a period of time, people become more used to these systems, and then you can build on more and more features. When we think about smart cities, we try and visualize what those outcomes are. So the mimic on the side here really shows within the city, what can I experience? And it's important to get that buy-in from participants, because when you then start speaking about costs, start speaking about the different teams that work on and enable a smart city from a systems perspective, it starts to make sense because you know what you're working towards. So these outcomes on the screen would be very similar to what we are seeing for many other cities: access to information, enhanced operational resilience, so buildings stay live because there's technology that picks up data anomalies, remote support, planning and insights, so cities can decide everything from train schedules through to transport corridors, through to opening times based on how people are moving around within a city, within a building, what services they use at what times, how to staff based on demand, and then really around the citizen experience, access to electronic services, and the ability to have real-time information and insights into the city's operations. So on the next slide, I'll speak about the city of Cape Town. So this is my home city, born, went to school, university, and it was really a full circle being able to then help develop the strategy for the city of Cape Town around how they implement technology. When we think of a city, and you can click the four icons, there are different, yeah, thank you. There are different components that you need to consider when a smart city is being built. So as I said earlier, I'm speaking from a design perspective. So what I want to share here is what do you need to consider and what do you need to think about as you build out that smart city? Yes, we've spoken about what do we want to achieve from the experience perspective, and now how do we get there? For the city of Cape Town, it was very much about, as for other cities, existing buildings, like the Civic Center that's on the screen, existing buildings with systems dating back to the 1960s, 1970s. So systems that are not necessarily communicating on converged networks, systems that don't have appropriate cybersecurity levels, analog standalone systems. So all those arrows that were drawn earlier by, I think it was by Kevin, about silo, integrated, etc. How do we get to that point? So the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, those are the facility-related control systems that we look at integrating. They're very much driven by sustainability, because the cost of energy, the cost of water, so in other words, the cost of your utilities, you can bring that down, but you can also ensure that you have resilience and redundancy in place. The buildings start to operate better. So that is often a driver for smart cities, just to reduce that operational expenditure. Technology, we helped develop the broadband networks. The broadband network allowed all of the different city buildings to be connected. That means the reliance on external internet service providers start to drop down, and the city can manage its own infrastructure and its own data sharing. So that's important. But then the investment into a broadband network needs to be offset by the utilization thereof, to ensure that the capital spending ties up. And then the smart block on the top really is, how do you bring all of those facility control systems, the technologies, the vision of the city and its operational structure together in order to deliver those outcomes? So the work of the city of Cape Town has really been to pioneer the concept of smart cities. It has recently been ranked the third smartest city in Africa, which then leads us to the next slide, which is Kigali, Rwanda. Oh, sorry, I'll get to Kigali. There's my spoiler. Before we get to Kigali, which was rated as the smartest city in Africa, as you saw on that screen before, the MEP system, the sustainability system, the technology systems, how do we get to a point that you can actually design it? So I want to keep us grounded in not just dreaming about smart cities, but how do we deliver smart cities? A lot of work is required in what we often define as the ReadyWorks component. So that's the bit we have at the bottom half of the circle. The ReadyWorks says, how do you take these analog systems and bring them up to a point where they can be integrated, where they can be automated, where they can leverage cloud services, artificial intelligence, data mining, etc., etc. We look at just the top part of the circle and say we want to install smart building management systems. We want to install AI. We want to leverage AI for data analysis and analytics. We can't do that if we haven't enabled the underlying systems to support that. So when you think about strategies towards moving towards smart, and that's why I said it's a journey, this enabling works need to take place before you get to the final component of implementing those systems. Next slide. So Kigali, Rwanda, voted as the smartest, or awarded the smartest city in Africa last year by IMD Smart City. I see there's a question, but I think we're getting to those questions at the end. So how do you enable, what are the fundamentals? And I see the formatting went a bit funny with the S, so apologies for that. What are the fundamentals towards enabling a smart city? So with my work in Rwanda, what is key? So what are the success factors that they've seen, or that they undertook in order to have the outcome that they've achieved now? And that is to set a vision. The vision allows, from the top down, from the mayor, the executive committee, the different department heads, finance, IT, engineering, services, to all start working towards the same vision. And then those OKRs and KPIs rolling down right down to the facility manager. So the vision is key. Strategic investment is, as I explained, the bottom half of the circle. Those really works. The decisions made at a small cost level that typically doesn't require the additional levels of approval need to support where we want to get to. A master plan is critical. Rwanda was really, or Kigali was really good at developing the overall master plan and saying, that's where we want to get to. It's very ambitious, but that is our goal. Now we're going to do piece by piece. So that master plan is important. Think about where you want to get to. That'll drive your decisions on day one. Connectivity is both wired, so fiber in the ground, overhead fiber, it's wireless connectivity. So connectivity is key to get to that smart city and data sharing component. Private-public partnerships allows, and yes, there was mention about the convenience fee. There are different financial models that need to be explored. There is a lot of investment available from the OEMs that want to drive their products and their solutions. And through private-public partnerships, the cities can leverage models that enhance an OPEX and a CAPEX total cost of ownership consideration. Procurement process, again, Kwazon City spoke about the ability through the smart city approach that they were able to bring down some of those corruption levels. It's not just Kwazon City. Cities, public sector sectors across the world is fraught with procurement challenges, so we say it like that. So to establish solid procurement processes allows this vision to be achieved. And then finally, citizen benefit. And yes, the citizen benefit we can put at the top, because that's what the vision is all about, is providing benefits to the citizen. So that's looking at the fundamentals to get to a point, if we think of what the work that's happened at Kigali. Next slide. So taking a different city as an example, Mahe, Seychelles, a really spectacular set of islands with amazing beauty. So what are some of the celebrations that Mahe has experienced through the investment in a move towards a smart city? They've been able to attract foreign investment because the city is more mature. The structures are more mature. There's increased transparency. Yes, Mahe still has challenges, as do many other countries as they move towards smart, not just in Africa, but across the world. But it starts to attract foreign investment. Because of that, and being on the global scale now, or on a global table now, tourism started to increase. With tourism, there's increased exposure, and you have businesses coming to visit. So the economy starts to grow. Access to internet in remote communities on Mahe. Mahe is the main island. Victoria is the city. So on Mahe, increased connectivity, and that's also starting to roll out to the other islands that make up Seychelles. Increased access to services, electrification, real-time knowledge. So Victoria's main bus terminal, access to commuter pathways, live tracking of where the buses are, enhanced security through the camera systems that was given as an example earlier. An investment in smart also opens up additional opportunities for employment, both within the city, but also Maya is now able to, and Victoria is able to become an outsourced provider, delivering services to other countries because of the investment that has been made in the city. So that investment really starts to pay for itself and starts to generate revenue when we think of the opportunities that it unlocks. And then next slide.
Yep.
I know I've spoken about some African cities that I've had personal experience in and have had the experience, the benefit of being a part of. If we bring that back to some of my experience in the US, those threads are common even in the US. So this is a district that we're working on within Denver, wants to be a smart district. And although I'm giving this as an example from Denver, there are also many other smart districts in the US that are experiencing or that have similar ambitions. So when you look at this vision about being an open access, technology-rich framework, so access to everyone, opening it up to competitors, strong focus on technology, a framework meaning it's not just this is the solution, but rather this is the guidelines. It allows different designers, solution providers, platforms to come in and all participate in this framework. So as part of the vision and the roadmap that I spoke of, to enable collaboration, which is key. That's private-public. That's a private-public component. For optimal use, so that's really your resource efficiency. So it's your utilities, your building usage, your space usage, your open spaces within a district to redefine what we call a city. And that's been such a common thread. And this we see across. So when you read this, you may be thinking of any city, and that's exactly what I wanted to emphasize is what we see in the US really is common to what I've seen in many other countries. And then my last slide is just emphasizing again that the fact that if we go to the next slide. There we go. Is emphasizing that no. Next one, thank you. The pyramid. There we go. An investment in achieving the outcomes, which is that actionable data at the top of the pyramid. We need to work from the bottom up. We need to work from the top down in terms of a driver perspective, but we have to realize that we need to do the investment from the bottom up to get to that point. So focus on at an infrastructure perspective, that connectivity layer, systems being able to communicate with one another. Look at the network. How do you build that broadband network? How do you establish that connectivity? Then look at systems that can integrate. How do they integrate? Why do they integrate? How do you measure the integration? How do you ensure that there's the resilience and the cybersecurity? And then you get to a point where you've got actionable data. And when you have actionable data, you can start to make intelligent decisions about how to better deliver services to the citizen, how to better deliver services within the building, and how to enhance your or reduce your carbon footprint and enhance your sustainability. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. I did see a couple of questions, but I think, David, you're going to keep those to the end and then we'll work through those.
Yes. If we can save some time for questions here at the end. Thank you, Jaco. Very informative and very good and eye-opening, I think, look at the guts of what it means to kind of implement these sort of solutions in a way that serves the purposes they're intended for. Our final speaker is Matt Known. Matt is an urban economist and development planner with over 20 years of work experience in more than 40 countries. He provides high-level strategic advice for climate-smart, inclusive, and fiscally responsible urbanization solutions for clients such as the UN, World Bank, EU, GIZ, and civic and private sector organizations such as the Gates Foundation and others. As the CEO of the Initiative for Advanced Urbanization and Artificial Intelligence, and as a Loeb Fellow at Harvard, he advances the rapid urbanism framework for addressing the land, location, infrastructure, housing, livelihood, mobility, environment conundrum. Matt will be sharing about the Rapid Urbanism Explorer platform, an augmented intelligence platform for evidence-based and integrated rapid iterative scenario planning. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, David. Just briefly or upfront, so I'm not a tech specialist as some here, but I'm let's say a use case specialist with domain knowledge. Also, let's say I think Kevin said that also about himself, and I believe it's very important to bring the two worlds together so that the tech can support the domain and vice versa. The domain informs the tech. So today, as David said, I'm not speaking on behalf of the World Bank, which is my main employer and where I also develop, let's say, e-government systems. But actually, I'm talking about a small nonprofit that I lead here in Germany. And in the nonprofit, we have developed a software that tackles or that shall tackle rapid urbanization challenges and thereby help to improve urbanization and to prevent, let's say, informal slums, etc. Through very simple planning, not perfect, not a substitute for, let's say, professional planners or whatever, but rather bringing in some planning into neighborhoods that otherwise are not planned at all. I will share my screen. Oh, you cannot share screen while someone else is sharing. So oh, you are sharing my presentation, right? That's fine. So then please go to the next slide. So I'm going briefly to talk about the challenge and why actually rapid urbanization or urbanization projects are really wicked. And then I present a theory of change that we try to build into the software. And then I show, or I explain a little bit about the complexity of the model and the lessons that we learned and what are potential next steps. And I believe this is interesting for the audience because it discusses a little bit the genesis of, let's say, a low-tech but very complex problem approach. Next slide. So rapid urbanization is massive, especially in Africa and South Asia, but also Southeast Asia, where in some areas the populations are more than doubling until 2050. And when the population doubles, often the urban area actually triples, which puts a lot of pressure on infrastructure systems, land supply, and in, let's say, relatively modest capacity environments. A lot of that urbanization will take place informally with severe consequences for the environment, for climate change, and for also vulnerabilities of the population that are living, let's say, in at-risk areas, etc. On the other hand, it's actually a great opportunity because if you only assume moderate cost per dwelling unit, and you want to provide some formal, adequate environment for vulnerable and populations, then this is like a huge market that you could untap. Next slide. Okay, but so then doing an inclusive, sustainable, resilient urbanization project like a sites and service project, which was the standard solution in the 1970s of the donor or international development community, and which tried to mimic slums rather than evicting slums or relocating and redeveloping slums, which were all not feasible solutions. If you do this, you need a plan. Typically, drawing up the plan takes up multiple months. Once the plan is drawn up, it cannot easily be changed. You cannot start from scratch again if it's not inclusive, it's not meeting the target population, or if it's too expensive fiscally in order to subsidize like a single project. You could do, but you cannot do a large program which is meaningful given that magnitude of rapid urbanization. So then this is just not done again. And so we see projects being replicated that are actually not meeting the target group, which are not, let's say, resilient or climate smart, adapted, etc. And so, but it's a question of time and resources. And so we would like a different tool that can help overcome this linear planning process, which is too slow and not possible to go back and do it again and again until you arrive at a feasible solution. Next one. So now we have a theory of change, and so we have like a very complex model which tries to bring different, let's say, elements of urbanization together. So the supply side, value chain, planning across different scales and steps, getting a good location, getting a good site layout, developing a housing solution, organizing the offtake, ensuring that this is affordable to the target group and can be financed. And then to iterate between these different models, it's a very slow and complex problem. So we build this into like what we call the augmented intelligence platform, the Rapid Urbanism Explorer, which has like a legal model, which has inputs like development control, road width, plot sizes, etc., and or the unit sizes of dwellings, then which has a spatial representation of that, a spatial model, and then which sends a bill of quantity to a financial model, and then you can price unit cost and unit revenue. And if you draw a different 3D model you change one parameter, then it takes about 40 seconds to give you the update to bill of quantity and an updated model. And you are kind of the slave of the software to some extent. So however it generates the 3D model, it does it, let's say, based on international best practices of size and services, which were done by USAID, DFID, World Bank, MIT models, which are kind of coded into the software. Right now, there's only one way of doing it, but later we can imagine developing different modules. And then you can provide services around using the software to help support multi-stakeholder participatory planning, evolving the community, bringing in the expert, the financial institutions, the governance, the public officials to discuss standards and what is feasible, what is inclusive, and then how to meet actually the target group's needs. And if you do this through the rapid iteration of different scenarios, then you are able to explore a lot more scenarios and then to maximize or to balance how to achieve profit, sustain the planet, and include the people, or and all of that can also inform how to, let's say, rewrite development regulations or build institutions so that there are these benefits. There are 2 more clicks on that slide, so maybe you just do them. What is important is that we have or developed the solution based on the complex knowledge that we have, and based, let's say, on the use case and working with communities, let's say, in developing countries. So we also piloted this on the Philippines, by the way, with Habitat for Humanity. And yeah, it's very important that it's the knowledge and the domain knowledge and the use case which should inform the tech. And it's relatively low tech, so we use only open access software. Next one. So this is kind of the value chain going from the city, mobilizing the location, planning the neighborhood, subdividing the blocks, putting buildings on it, and then saying what's the initial dwelling environment, also in permitting for incremental development. Next click, please. Then on each of these, the stakeholders can make data inputs. Basically, it's the development control or the parameters which inform the spatial 3D model. Next one. So then the various spatial models are integrated and they are kind of linked to each other. Next one. Each model sends a bill of quantity to the financial model where this is priced, and let's say the land development model will inform the pricing of the land, which is then an input into the next scale where the building is placed on a plot. And all of this, you can then assess the impact. So the density, let's say the land consumption per capita, is there enough open space? What's the financial feasibility? What's the profitability for the model, for the developer? What's the fiscal footprint, etc. And the affordability to the target group. And you can also attach, let's say, a housing finance and a housing refinance institution refinancing model to that, which we don't have at the moment. So this is kind of a complete vision of the various elements that could come together. obviously you can then use a 3D model to do, let's say, heat, urban heat risk analysis, or you can do all sorts of accessibility to public transit or whatever, and then you can optimize for these. Next one. So this is kind of on the right-hand side, you see, let's say, the user interface. On the left-hand side, you make the parametric inputs, like the development control. In the center, you have a 3D model, and you have different, let's say, views of that. And on the right-hand side, you have the financial feasibility and kind of like a spider diagram for multi-balance, multi-objective balance. And you can see how the performance of that is. Next slide. So the lessons that we learned, so we are really a small NGO, and we started with this huge problem. So we think the tool is effective for structuring multi-stakeholder decision-making. So the current version is not, let's say, a machine learning AI or a very deep tech smart city. It's rather a complex algorithms which are fused together, as in the model that you saw. We did some advanced experiments with the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, which were, let's say, which yielded interesting results, but which were not really practical to solve any of the problems. So we think rather we can improve the complex algorithms of the human-coded model, and then give this, for example, to a machine to then do problem solving based on parameters that you provide. Let's say meet target group X level of income, or generate a certain land use mix, or these kind of things. And then the AI, or like a real AI, because right now we only have an augmented intelligence, and a real artificial intelligence could make you proposals how to meet that. But then, so we have one big problem, and that's a chicken and egg problem. So because we are small, we are not attached formally, let's say, to a big research organization or the government. There are economies of scale, no? Once you have like a certain system which basically works, it's actually really cheap to do more projects. But to kind of improve the software and to do, let's say, like one project, it's actually quite expensive relative on a per project cost. But if you would do like 100 projects, and actually if you have populated the software with data, you can draw a different site geometry or select a different site, press the apply button, and then it takes 1 minute to generate, let's say, the scenario, which maybe the first pilot took you 3 months or 6 months to collect the data and to plan in community workshops. But then in the if you would do this on the next site, the neighboring site, you could generate the next scenario actually in a few minutes. And so it's this problem which we haven't been able to overcome. And so we are looking actually for an institutional partner to kind of help us to do this at a meaningful scale and to accelerate. We have talked with a UN agency. They are interested, but they also need like a funder. And then it becomes funny because if they go for the if they would get the funding, then they cannot partner with us. So then they, because of UN procurement law, then they need to procure it, and it would not easily, let's say, they would not easily select us because we are so small. That's kind of like a funny problem we are trying to solve right now. Next one. Yeah, so we envision to move to the next stage and to find a partner to do this, and where like on the previous slide, so where we do, let's say, a few pilot projects, and then there's some overhead budget to improve the software and tailor it to the projects, and then we would have, let's say, a more efficient and more stable system in order to scale up. But it's also, we are open to suggestions. I think next slide is the last one. Thank you. So these are also our partners. Kudos to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt. That's very interesting. And again, another sort of very interesting insight in terms of the capability of technology to help create efficiencies in the face of enormous challenges. We are running very much towards the end of this. I think we probably only have time for one question with a brief response. We had hoped to have more, but hopefully the benefit to you has been sort of a very nuanced discussions and conversations about smart cities and both the opportunities and challenges. So I'm going to ask my colleague Nishant, if you can, to maybe select a question and to direct it to the panel, the appropriate panelist.
Yeah, sure, David. Just give me a moment. So Caroline has a question for Michael. The cost and did you conduct a cost analysis to assess if adoption of smart technology was there? Like, did you do a cost analysis and your experience on that? And is it currently mostly cost effective, or have there been any findings on that? How cost effective that use of smart technology has been? So that is a question for Michael.
Yeah, so quick response is I wish I did, but unfortunately, in some cases, that is not the decision-making factor, right? So the decision-making in our case is threefold. Either we would pursue a smart city if, one, it provides a service more efficiently at a reasonable price. Two, if it reduces cost. Or three, if it increases revenue. And a lot of the things that were implemented were no choice. You have the pandemic when a lot of these things happened. And so cost is not the primary factor, right? It's efficiency of service. Can you actually provide? Having said that, we did cost analysis after, at least on one or two services, and they are significantly cheaper. In part because of the situation we're in. There's so much corruption and leakage, that large leakage of worth. In our case, during the pandemic, we gave billions of pesos out, and leakage of anywhere from 1% to 5% is quite large. And we digitized a lot of the service during that time when we paid out financial assistance, so that we avoided duplication of recipients. And in our case, if we could get leakage of 1%, that's actually not bad, because prior to digitalization, you could probably imagine anything above 15, 20, 30% not actually going to the end user. And so we did the calculations. But again, I just want to emphasize that our initial decision making was, provided to provide more efficient services at a reasonable cost, we would pursue.
Carlin, does that answer your question? If you want to add anything to that question. All right, then I'll move
I
ahead.
don't want to take more time, and I guess Mike and I, we can discuss. It's just that when you come with a project like that, people always ask you what is the cost benefit analysis, and I completely understand the leakage that you were talking about, but also for me was at what scale it is, what size of city are we talking about to make it justifiable, both from what you are saying, better services. But also, I mean, if it's a small city, you will never reach a scale where it will, I would say, make sense. But I don't want to take more time since we are running out of time.
We can talk about it offline.
I will reach out to you on the side. Thanks.
All right.
All right, then I'll move to the next question. It's again a question from Caroline. This is for Jaco. How did lack of reliable tech infrastructure hinder the deployment and adoption of smart city technologies? And what strategy?
Sorry to interrupt. I think that you should go to someone else.
I think we're at the end of our time, unfortunately, Nishant.
You can go to someone else. We'll talk.
All right.
I think we need to probably draw this to a close, because we're at the end of our time. So I think we may have to conclude there. We apologize there want more time, but again, I think the benefit to those involved is we really got some pretty substantive discussions from an insider's perspective. I hope you find today's conversation beneficial. We plan to host and sponsor more such discussions in the areas of urban development and infrastructure. I hope through this discussion you saw both some of the great potential for smart city advances, as well as a realistic picture of the realities that are faced in implementing these solutions. I think we heard several important things, that the importance to keep citizens at the center of the process and to keep design of technology oriented around human use. That there are benefits beyond even sometimes the initial intentions, beyond efficiency and reducing corruption and other things. So I hope, again, this was a very beneficial conversation. These kinds of discussions are really meant to be conversation starters for me, and to help spur further interaction and maybe even possibilities for us to interact offline. I want to again thank our panelists today for taking their time to participate in this discussion and for all the time they took to prepare for it. Special thanks for Mike, who jumped in at the end. It's close to, it's 10:30 in the evening where he is, so well past at least my bedtime. I also want to take the opportunity to thank my co-chair, Carlene, and our colleague, Nishant, who both were instrumental in help organizing this and pull this off. And I want to finally thank Malvika and the broader SID team for their tireless work in supporting the logistical details to make this happen. So really appreciate it. We'll leave you to the rest of your day and look forward to future interactions together. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.